Oh, God. Hi, everyone. Cuthany Foot Tano here, the internet's busiest music nerd. And it's time for a review of the new Titus Andronicus record, The Most Lamentable Tragedy.
The Titus Andronicus, the deadliest of the dinosaurs.
They're a band. They're a band from Glen Rock, New Jersey, delivering their fourth full-length LP with this project, their largest and most ambitious album to date. And it is 90 minutes long, which isn't really a big deal to me. I mean, over the past few years, I have made a point to celebrate large, ambitious, grand, far-reaching records. Albums like To Pimp a Butterfly, the double Death Grips album they just put out, The Powers That Be, Kamasi Washington's The Epic, Swan's To Be Kind, or even the Knife's Swan Song LP-ish, The Habitual. The new Prurient album as well. There are lots of examples of albums that may not necessarily be easily digestible because of their length, but it's records like these that stop at least some listeners in their tracks, and they can't help but stand in awe of just the grandiosity and the gargantuousness of the record, just the scope and the aspirations these artists bring forward in their music. However, in the case of Titus Andronicus, though, their big presentation and their ambition hasn't always spelled out into mind-blowing records for me. Take their punk-fueled tribute to America's Civil War, The Monitor, which, I don't know, I thought was a little overblown. Even though Titus Andronicus showcases indie rock and sort of folk and Americana tendencies, I think their ferocious punk delivery kind of leaves their songwriting feeling one note at times. And I've had a similar issue with other punk bands that try to take punk music and sort of elevate it to this highfalutin conceptual thing. Bands like Fucked Up, or even Green Day with the record American Idiot. And frontman Patrick Stickles, as much as he reminds me of Conor Oberst back when he was just full of so much more piss and vinegar, his voice is so growly, like a torture victim being forced to gargle acid against his will, that his singing kind of grows old for me after a while too. And then we have the record Local Business, which Titus Andronicus followed up The Monitor with. And I like that this was a more measured album, but the rough around the edges recording and the lack of exciting songwriting made this record a bit of a disappointment, just not as significant as The Monitor. But obviously, Titus Andronicus is not taking a measured approach with this new album over here, with it being as long as it is. Also keep in mind that this record has almost 30 tracks on it. Almost 30 tracks. But with each track here, you're not getting a fully fleshed out song. I am unhappy to report that this record is chock full of these completely unnecessary interlude and intermission tracks that are not orchestrated that well, just kind of pad out the record, kill time, and aren't really that evocative either, just don't really bring that much to the album. Many of these shorter cuts don't really fit into the record aesthetically, like we're getting these really lavish instrumental bits that don't really fit in with the punkier, just harder, more in-your-face bits of the record. And I think some of these interludes really just serve as a distraction to make the record sound a little bit more instrumentally refined and make this album seem like more than what it really is. I mean, I think Titus Andronicus is really a all force and no forte, no finesse on this record, and I think these intermissions are a really weak attempt at masking that. The only shorter tracks I liked on this record were the very speedy and punky Lookalike, and then the very large vocal piece on their cover of Auld Lang Syne. And I guess the song Please was kind of like just an extension of the previous song. These intermission moments even become kind of laughable when the second half of the record rolls in and we get a minute-long intermission of just complete silence on this album, as if the previous song was just so huge and so amazing that we just needed a break, as if we needed an intermission, an interlude track before we get into more intermission and interlude tracks, as if this album has been telling a tightly woven musical story up until this point, when really this record just kind of sounds like a conceptual mess, like a friend's indie rock band that was commissioned to write and score a high school rock opera with a very low budget. And these interlude tracks take up almost half of this entire record's track list. So the bulk of this album's runtime is placed on the shoulders of these 4, 5, 6, 9-minute tracks, which can be kind of hit or miss, even if these songs feature Titus Andronicus's usual mix of triumph and turbulence. These indie and punk interpretations of Americana and folk rock, as well as piano rock, which is kind of like an extension of this bar band shtick the band indulges in on a few times on this record, and they manage to keep a straight face while they do it. I have no idea how. But I want to give this record credit where it's due and say that there are actually some pretty listenable punk-flavored barn burners in the track listing here. The song Dimed Out, or Fired Up, or the track Stranded on My Own. And even the song No Future. I like the melodic guitar leads on these tracks. I like the tight performances, the blaring guitars, and it seems like there are most definitely tunes at the core of these tracks too, though Stickles sort of seems intent on burying them with his just non-stop vocal contortions. And even when he tones it down on songs like Lonely Boy, his vocals come off just kind of goofy, nasal, and whiny, and just not really entertaining. Though, again, I want to give credit, and I want to say that this track, again, does feature kind of that dive bar piano rock instrumentation, and there are actually some wonderful layers here. The sax is pretty electrifying at one point, and it's cool that Titus Andronicus is able to incorporate all this instrumentation, keep track of it, and just have it sounding so ferocious and good. The song Fired Up has a lot of instrumentation laced into it too, and it's well orchestrated, as rough as the production can be on this record. I like that Titus Andronicus can arrange a lot of instrumentation into a track and have it sounding pretty coherent. And the lyrics on these tracks, a lot of the time, I think are pretty impressive too. On Lonely Boy, I'm getting a lot of themes of just antisocial tendencies and just being fed up and angry and just not taking it anymore. Also on the song I Lost My Mind, which is actually a Daniel Johnston cover, albeit a very bad Daniel Johnston cover. The way that Titus Andronicus just layers instrumentation onto this track, I feel like I'm listening to a joke song, especially with Pat Stickles' vocals on this track sounding as ridiculous as they do. I feel like Titus Andronicus was trying to recreate the same kind of manic, rough, just really unkempt demeanor that you might get out of a Daniel Johnston record, but weren't able to actually do it in a convincing manner, and it just ended up sounding sort of messy and amateurish and unenjoyable. There's just a really strong focus on mental health and losing one's mind throughout this record that ties the entire album together. It's obviously the concept. And it's actually an interesting concept. I commend Stickles on his incredibly personal, raw, and sometimes sexual lyrics on tracks like Fatal Flaw and He Said, She Said, She Said, He Said. However, I do think there are times on this record where a bit of fat could have been cut. They sort of take ideas and they beat them into the ground to the point where they're just not really that exciting or just have been completely explored, like on the more aggressive revisitation of the song I Lost My Mind later on the record, or on the song I'm Going Insane, which is another rough and wild punk tune that I enjoy, but we're just kind of getting these pretty decent punk tunes alternating with this excruciating piano rock on songs like Mr. E-Man. And not only are we getting this excruciating piano rock on this record, but some of these songs have some of the worst singing I've heard on any Titus Andronicus record yet, like the song Stable Boy. I kind of feel like, do they even care? Do they even care at this point? Do they even care that the vocals just like sound so bad on this song? I appreciate, and I'm just trying to give the band the benefit of the doubt and understand that how awful these vocals are might in fact be playing into the theme and the concept of this record in some kind of way, but it doesn't make it any more enjoyable. Even for somebody who is a longtime fan of emotional wreck songwriters, guys like Elliott Smith and Conor Oberst and Daniel Johnston and Simon Joyner, and even the Violent Femmes. Toward the end of the first half on this record, we have the 9-minute More Perfect Union, which not only references the theme of this record, but calls back to Titus Andronicus's The Monitor. And this track features a really strong, folky melody, really lavish instrumentation, and it just continues through just one musical passage after another, where often Titus Andronicus will change things up stylistically, from punk to Americana to even a bit of classical music too. And it's impressive that the band has this kind of versatility, but not every moment here keeps me on the edge of my seat. And after numerous listens to this track, the song just ends up feeling like, I don't know, a bit of a clusterfuck. Kind of like the album itself. Just not really the fireworks show I was hoping for, considering its length and considering it's kind of the centerpiece of the album. And then, just 2 minutes away with a little bit of, just like interlude space in between, just like around the corner, we're getting another 9-minute track, almost as if the two halves of this album are mirroring each other in some kind of way. There are a lot of details, deeper details in this album that when I read into them, from this kind of mirror phenomenon to the fact that the very final track of this record sounds just like the intro track, which loops back around to the very start of the album just to kick everything off you've just heard once again. All of these things, all these finer, weird details I'm very impressed by, but just like the songs, the singing, the core elements of this record just aren't really that good. However, I will say I do enjoy a lot of tracks on the second half of this record more than I do the first. I do think some of the best tracks on this album are in the second half. Some of the most catchy and melodic tunes this entire album has to offer are on this half, like the song A Pair of Brown Eyes, which is a Pogues cover, although the very intro of this track is awful. The vocals are terrible and very unbearable. And the song Fatal Flaw, and the song Come On, SYOBHAN, which is easily my pick for best tune on the entire record. I'm just not really sure what to say about this album. I mean, after listening to it numerous times and just trying to digest it and take in its fine details and just try to appreciate its concept. I mean, I've really been trying to give the singing, the songwriting, the production a bit of a pass, because I feel like what Titus Andronicus tried to do with this album was really ambitious, was really impressive, and was really cool. They took a risk, and they took on an idea that most rock bands would just not even have the guts to even attempt. However, I can't ignore that I just don't like a large bulk of this album. I think if you cut this record down to the best full songs and maybe incorporated an interlude track here and there, you would have had a record that was at least on par with Local Business. Obviously a little more grand and a little more conceptual, but at least on par. But that's not the record we have here. The record we have here is packed with filler. Even a track that in the track listing, in the title, it says open parentheses, filler, close parentheses, in the title. You said it before me. I feel like Titus Andronicus came through with a cool idea and a cool concept here, but the music just isn't that great. And even though this record does have some flashes in the pan that I give it credit for, its just length makes it so excruciating. This is such an excruciating record to listen to. Yeah, I mean, this record was super, super exhausting to me and just not very fulfilling at all. And at least let it be known that even though I didn't care for this record, I'm certainly not, like super indifferent toward it. I felt something. I certainly felt something. And I could see people liking this. I could see people liking this. People who have loved The Monitor and stuck by Titus Andronicus through Local Business and love the band's more lo-fi sound on their debut record, I think they'll enjoy this album. I think they will appreciate this album for its ambition, appreciate it for its concept, and will appreciate the performances and see Patrick Stickles' performances as very passionate and aggressive and just really intense, which they most definitely are. But I think Stickles' lack of skill and just his manic delivery on these songs hurts the listenability of this record, at least in my opinion, at least for me, when it comes to what I want to hear out of an album. I'm feeling a strong 4 to a light 5 on this thing. Transition. Have you given this record a listen? If you have, what did you think of it? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Why? What do you think I should review next? And that's it. Anthony Fantano, Titus Andronicus, forever. Hey everybody, Anthony Fantano here, you know who it is, wanting to make a quick little announcement here telling you about our new website, our new needledrop.com website, theneedledrop.com actually, which we built through Squarespace, fantastic platform where you yourself can build your own website on the cheap, but it looks nice for your home business, for your own personal hobby, whatever. You're calling the shots here. You're building the website. It's your website. And while I'm here telling you about this, hit up a link in the description where you will get a discount to build your own website on Squarespace. And also, the page that you're looking at right now is a cool little playlist that we pulled together, a Ghostface Killah starter pack with the whole Action Bronson beef thing that happened recently. A lot of people have been talking about Ghostface Killah, but I realize that there are a lot of younger listeners who may not be that I want to say familiar with him. So I have pulled together a compilation of my favorite Ghostface Killah songs from across his discography. Familiarize yourself with one of hip-hop's greatest MCs using the link down below in the description, a different link than the Squarespace link, another link to a page on the website where you can stream this whole playlist of fantastic songs from Ghostface Killah's discography, and that's it. You're the best. Talk to you soon. Forever.